Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where we talk about all things movies. Welcome especially if you're new. If you enjoy this video, be sure to smash the like button. That just helps me gauge what sort of content or which movies you enjoy me talking about. And be sure to subscribe if you enjoy movies as much as me or see as many as I do, just so that way you get notified whenever I post a new video, which is usually about 2 or 3 reviews per week. That's about how many movies I see. So I try to post a review for every movie that I see, just to be able to talk about it with you all. So thanks for being here, and with that, we'll jump right into the Movies Monthly for March of 2022. So while I review each movie individually in its own video, at the end of the month I just like to kind of do a retro and kind of revisit just briefly each of the movies that I saw and rank them in a general tier list. And then I also talk about any movies that I watched at home or TV that I watched at home, and sometimes that includes stuff that I haven't created an individual video for. So I just like to kind of talk about that, and then I'll just open it up to you all in the comment section. Let me know what movies you guys saw this month, what TV you've been watching recently. I'm always open for recommendations and looking for new stuff to watch. So with that, we'll jump right into the tier list for March of 2022 and the movies that I saw in the theater. Alright, so for my tier list, I break it down into 4 tiers. The top tier is all the movies that I absolutely loved, and then below that we've got the movies that I liked a lot, and then other movies that I thought were fun, and then movies that I was just kind of meh on seeing. So in this section, I just go through chronologically in the order that I saw them throughout the month, and just rank them, recapping very briefly my thoughts on it. For each of these movies, they've all got their own reviews, so be sure to check those out if you haven't and you're interested in those movies. So first up, we have The Batman, and this came out right at the beginning of the month. As I said in my review, this was my most anticipated movie up until Doctor Strange in May, so the first almost half of the year, maybe first third of the year, more like it. And for me, this one lived up to my expectations. I love Batman, especially the Dark Knight trilogy. I really enjoyed Ben Affleck's Batman and Batman v Superman and Justice League. So I was excited to get a new iteration of the character, and that's exactly what we got. Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves created, in my opinion, a very unique version of Batman that we haven't seen on screen before, and at the end of the day, this is a movie that I absolutely loved and would highly recommend. So that one goes in the loved category. Next up, we have The Cursed, which I'm not a big fan of horror films, so this one was... It's hard to put it in like the fun category because I don't really have fun with horror films, but it wasn't quite to the level where I'd say I liked it, but neither was it meh. So it was fun enough as a horror film, granted that you can't really have fun at those. I thought the aspect of it being more of a period piece lent itself well to the horror part of it, and forcing you to have dark scenes for the reason that there wasn't electricity back then. But yeah, that one was a fun movie, I would say. Yeah, not one I'd go out of my way to recommend, but it was well put together. Next up, we have X. This was another horror film. I liked it better than The Cursed, but it's still... trying to think. So I think it was... This, again, I'd put in the fun category, as fun as horror films go, at any rate. I thought that the overall, as a horror film, it was fairly well put together. The kills were all pretty good, which is kind of what you're looking for, and then kind of the characters and the story that was there was a bit better than I've usually found in horror films in general. So I would recommend that one a bit more than The Cursed for those of you that like horror. Next up, we have The Outfit, and this was just a straight-up drama. It felt very much like a play that was simply, captured on as cinema, because it all takes place in one location. But that doesn't take away from the movie at all. I really liked it. It's close to I think just for the type of movie that it can't quite get into my personal loved category, but I thought it was very, very good and at the upper end of liked in my book. I thought the story and the drama and the characters were all very well done. I definitely recommend seeing it if you haven't seen it yet. But it's just a sort of kind of crime drama, focuses on, you got like mobsters and that sort of thing. So that one's a good movie. After that we have Umma. Sorry, that one is going in the meh category. If you've seen my review for that, that shouldn't be a surprise. This one was just a movie that there were some interesting things in it, but for me, it just wasn't all that enjoyable, especially, I mean, that was the third horror movie that I've seen this month, and the other two were definitely better. I just thought it didn't really need to be a horror film, and the parts of it that were horror were basically just, it was just kind of hallucinations, sort of, or tricks on the brain, more or less, is how it came across, which for me just felt like cheap horror. So it's unfortunately not one that I can recommend. It wasn't necessarily a bad film. I thought it was, well made, kind of on some of the technical points for the cinematography and the acting, but at the end of the day, yeah, I just didn't really care for it all that much coming out of the theater. Next up, we have Alice, and this is a movie that is about an African American who's raised to think that she's a slave in the middle of the 19th century. So I apologize in my review for the ignorance that I displayed there. I had somebody kindly comment that this is actually, based off of real events. I mean, I'm sure it's, somewhat, like, as movies do, they take some liberties. So I didn't dig terribly deep into it, but the movie didn't make it super clear whether or not this was like jumping through a wormhole in time, or if it was just the fact that this person was, or the people, because it's more than one person, are raised to think that they're slaves in just a very secluded area in the middle of the 20th century. And there are, there are documented and reported cases of that. So it was interesting to kind of look that up and learn about that after the movie, but as a viewer, I kind of wish the movie had made that a little bit more clear. I think it would have helped my enjoyment of the film to realize that it was actually a lot more based off of real events than just like a sort of, if you've seen the movie Just Visiting, like that's what I thought the movie was kind of going to be as it was playing out, or that's what it was going for as far as, jumping ahead in time and just being somebody out of their time. But that wasn't what it was. So that gave me a little bit more appreciation for the movie and what it was trying to do afterwards. But at the end of the day, it still wasn't it was still a meh movie for me. I was fairly bored throughout, and it's unfortunate because I know it's a very important subject matter, but as far as the movie, and that one I go into like full spoilers, so I talk a lot about that movie. So if you're interested to hear more, definitely check that video out. But yeah, unfortunately I couldn't put that one higher, but it has been a good source of, for me to be able to understand that those events actually happened, or at least similar events have happened, and that was honestly just shocking to learn that. But on to the next one, we have Infinite Storm, and this is a movie about a like search and rescue person that works in the mountains. I believe it's in New Hampshire, I think, but she basically finds a man at the top of this mountain and helps him and tries to help him down the mountain in the midst of the cold and the snow. So there's a lot of good in this movie. I really liked the scenery that they captured. I wanted to like it more, but I put it in the fun category. It bordered on liking it, but there were parts of it that I didn't care for as much, and like kind of some of the pacing and the predictability of it that just put it down kind of in my fun tier. But it's one that I'd recommend. And then last up, we've got The Lost City, and this came out just last weekend, and I liked this movie a lot. I wouldn't put it in the loved category, but I had a lot of fun with this movie. Probably some of the most fun I've had all year, just as far as, laughs and seeing the screen chemistry between the two leads and just everything that went with it. It was a really fun experience at the theater that I went to see it with. It was pretty full and a lot of people were laughing throughout. So that was just a really fun experience. So while this isn't, high art cinema, it was a lot of fun, and so much fun that I bumped it out of the fun category into my liked category. So it's not like a great artistic film, but it's one that I enjoyed a lot and that I liked at the end of the day. So I definitely recommend that one as well. So that does it for our month of March. There were 8 films that I saw in theaters. I actually saw The Batman twice, so I made 9 trips to the theaters this month, or saw 9 movies. Some of them I saw back to back, so it wasn't quite technically 9 trips. But it's been a while since I've seen a movie a second time in theaters. I think part of that was just not the weekend that I saw The Batman for the second time, there just wasn't as much playing, and so I liked it enough and wanted to go see it again, and it definitely held up on its second watch. So that does it for the movies that I saw at the theater. Next, we'll go into the movies and TV shows that I saw at home. And these, I, for the most part, haven't done a review. I did a review just for Turning Red, but the others for the TV shows, I haven't, they don't have their own videos yet, so I'll maybe go into a little bit more detail on those instead of just kind of a summary. So for Turning Red, this one came out, I think this was about the middle of the month, and it was, it's a fairly, there's a lot of good things in it because it's a Pixar film. The animation was really well done. The voice acting and everything like that, but the story that was told wasn't very interesting for me personally, and I felt like I couldn't really connect with any of the characters. So for me, it was a meh film, but I think it's one that a lot of people could enjoy it just depends on, how much it actually connects with you. I think if it connects with you, it's a movie that you could potentially love, but that just wasn't what it was for me. Going on to the TV that I watched throughout this month. So I try to, when I watch shows, I try to do just about a season at a time. So right now I was at the point of watching the second season of Peaky Blinders, and I wrapped that up, and then I've been watching some other stuff. So that'll probably be, I might try to get around to the third season next month, but I find that watching a whole series, if it's, seasons 1 through 5, it kind of makes the show, it's harder to remember the show if you binge it all at once, although, sometimes it's hard to limit yourself because you just want to go on to the next season because it's so good. But I find it more enjoyable to kind of spread it out and just do a season at a time. So Peaky Blinders season 2, it had been a few months since I finished season 1. I think I did that in the fall of last year. But it's a slow burn of a show is how I describe it. It's kind of like Daredevil, where it's a very dense show and it takes a bit of time to get into it. It doesn't hook you immediately on the first episode. At least it didn't for me. But by the end of the first season, when you've had time to get to know these characters, you're totally invested and hooked on the show. So I had kind of a similar experience with season 2 because it had been a little while since I had seen season 1, which I did like a lot. But it took me a few episodes to get back into the swing of things with season 2. But by the end, I was totally hooked and binging those episodes one after another. And so this is a show that trying to think if I should give it it's close. It's definitely at the higher end of my liked category. I think that's where I'm going to put it. I think I could see this show becoming it could merge into my loved category by the end of the series, but right now on season 2, it's a very good show and one that I definitely recommend, but it's probably not quite at the level of this is one of my favorite shows ever. But yeah, definitely recommend Peaky Blinders if you haven't seen it, at least based off of the first 2 seasons. That's all I can speak to right now. Next up, we have Reacher. I finished that. I didn't watch it week to week as it came out. I kind of realized that it was, I was hearing about it a bit more as a new show that was pretty good. And so I got into it because, yeah, it looks like this started filming or started dropping last month in February. But I binged it all because I only started getting into it once it had all released. So I watched it over the course of about a week. It was a very easy show to binge watch, but I put it very similar. It's like I'm not surprised that this show is on Amazon. It's similar to a lot of the content that I watch on there, whether that's Bosch or Jack Ryan or Goliath. Like it has that kind of crime drama feel that a lot of their shows that I've seen have, and I think it was a good show. I think I liked some of those other ones better, and I think the main reason was it didn't really have any, like usually for this sort of show, or I mean it kind of reminded me a little bit of Mayor of Easttown or like that sort of thing where you've got a small town, you know, crime sort of thing, like crime coming to a small town and how that handles it. And for a lot of these types of shows that I've seen, what makes them great is that they've got some sort of twist that you can't really see coming, but it makes sense. And this show, I thought all the twists that they put in there, or all the reveals, were really like I assumed as much. So I think I guessed at all of them, or all but one. And so I didn't have that feeling of like, holy crap, that's what's going on here. And without that, if it had that, I might be inclined to put it in the love category. But I liked the show a lot. I thought the characters were all like unique and played well together and played off of each other very well. I thought it was kind of interesting how like to have a main character who isn't super charismatic. I thought it kind of got old. Like the small critique I'll make of it is it got kind of old how much they kind of poke fun at his like size. Like it was kind of funny the first couple times, but they do so like once or twice per episode, and that kind of got old. So if they make a second season of this, I hope they don't necessarily keep that up, just because I thought that joke was overplayed by the end. But this is definitely a show that I liked. I think it's a little formulaic, but what it does is very good. And the action and the story are all done well. Next up, we've got How I Met Your Father. And I am a huge How I Met Your Mother fan. I think I've seen that show all the way through probably like 4 times now, something like that, from beginning to end. I think it's around 4. It might be 3, might be 5. I've kind of lost track. I'm pretty sure it's 4, but between 4 and 5. Anyway, so I enjoy that show a lot. I know a lot of people are upset or not happy with how they ended that show, but I thought there was a lot of good stuff that they did with the finale. It did come as a little bit of it was a little anticlimactic to take that long to introduce the mother, and then, I mean, I guess spoilers, this is an old show, so I don't know that you really need a spoiler warning for How I Met Your Mother. But to introduce her in the last season and then just have her, die relatively soon after that, that was a little anticlimactic, but like Ted ending up with Robin, I felt like that was being led to throughout the entire show. So that just kind of made sense that like if Ted found his wife and then she died, I think it's a natural course of action that he would then end up with Robin. But to each their own. I know a lot of people aren't really happy with it, but I still enjoyed it. I mean, I think they could have done the ending a bit better, but anyway, I like that show a lot. I like the characters and I've spent a lot of time with those characters now, having rewatched the series as many times as I have. So I was excited to see that they were coming out with a spiritual successor to the show in How I Met Your Father. And this show it's been fine so far. I think it's kind of between meh and fun. I'd probably put it in the fun category by the end of the season. I think the first half of the season was pretty meh and pretty standard as far as sitcoms go, but I think it's hard for any sitcom to kind of find its identity in the first little bit. And I think this one had an even tougher job because it was trying to be a spiritual successor to How I Met Your Mother, but it can't do the exact same thing necessarily either. So it has to stand on its own 2 feet, and I think it's been trying to find out how to do that. And I think it does towards the end of the first season. Like, I think all the characters feel unique and different from anything that we had in How I Met Your Mother. But personally, I'm not terribly invested in any of them at the end of the first season. Now, it's hard to remember where I was at and as far as like how much I enjoyed How I Met Your Mother at the end of the first season. Like, having seen the whole series now, I enjoy the first season a bit more just because I enjoy the characters a bit more. But I don't know. This one, I'll probably continue to watch as they come out with more seasons. I think a second season's been greenlit, and it's got even more episodes that they're making than the first season. So I hope it improves. I think it could improve, but right now I would put it kind of at the bottom of the fun category. It's not one that I would necessarily recommend, but I wouldn't say, I wouldn't not recommend it either and say it's a waste of time. I think it's a fun enough show, and I'm kind of curious to see where they go from here. So those are the new movies and TV that I watched during March at home. And then as normal, I usually have some movies that I see as like rewatches. So I'm just going to talk about these briefly just as a means of like, hey, if you haven't seen these, then, usually these are ones that I recommend if they're rewatches. But and so use it as a means to give some recommendations. But also, if you've seen these movies, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them as well. So it's been... I haven't really been able to rewatch any of the movies that hit theaters lately, or last year rather, because I've been seeing as many movies as I am in theaters. So I've kind of been getting around to finally rewatching for the first time some of the movies that came out last year that I've picked up as 4K discs or whatever it is, and watching it at home. So these I would, for the most part, I've loved each of these because I've been prioritizing the movies that I liked, especially from last year. But I rewatched A Quiet Place Part 2. I saw that just once before in theaters, and I loved this movie. It was in my top 10 for last year, and it's one that I highly recommend. I liked it a lot better than the first one, just with the type of story that it told. It gave me... Like, at the end of the day, it reminded me of it had kind of a mixed feeling between Stranger Things and The Last of Us. Those are kind of the two related properties. I'm sure there's other stuff that those also feel like, but those are the two that I'm familiar with that I compare it to. And I thought it was a very well done sequel and one that I highly recommend. I'm definitely looking forward to the next installment in that series. The Phantom of the Opera, this was one that my sister-in-law wanted to watch because it had been a while since she had seen it. I think I've seen it before, or at least most of it before. I kind of forget because it's been a while. I really like the music for The Phantom of the Opera, but watching this, having not seen it in a long time, this was... I'm going to put it in the fun category. It's close. Like, as a movie, it's kind of fun, maybe down to meh. I highly recommend the music, but the movie as a whole isn't one that I'd go out of my way to recommend, unfortunately. Crimes of Grindelwald, this came out a few years ago, and I rewatched it I also rewatched the first one a couple months ago, but I've been, rewatching this series in preparation for The Secrets of Dumbledore, which comes out this month. And this is one that I liked. I think this got a lot of mixed reactions to this installment of the series, but I liked it. I thought it did a good job of world building, and while it didn't progress the story a lot, I really liked seeing Johnny Depp as Grindelwald. So I'm kind of upset that they asked him to step down. I think Mads Mikkelsen will do a good job of the character, but I think it'll just be kind of a different... It'll have a very different feel, I think, than Johnny Depp. So I'm gonna miss him in the third installment, but I think Mads will do a good job at the end of the day, though, too. So I'm really excited, though, for that to come out. That's just a couple weeks away now. Free Guy, this is a movie that I absolutely loved from last year. It's right up my alley. I'm a software engineer, so when it goes into things like AI and video games, like those are all right up my alley. And then it was just a lot of fun, really like good script, and the jokes were for the most part all on point. And just yeah, this was one of my favorite movies, especially as a non-franchise movie, where I like you never know what you're gonna get with these. It was just a nice surprise to get last year. And then lastly, I rewatched the Zack Snyder's Justice League. I watched that when it first released a year ago, and then I haven't seen it since. But this is a movie that I loved as well. That was in my top 10 from last year. I think it's so much better than the original theatrical release that I don't know if I'll ever watch that original again. It seems like they took his 4-hour cut, eliminated 3 hours of it, and then added on an hour of reshoots, which were all, in my opinion, like worse than what he shot. So it feels just like a completely different movie, not an extended movie. And I'm very happy that they gave him the money and the time to be able to finish his vision of this project, because I think it is a very good movie. And I think while I think I like the Avengers better, it is at least in the conversation of being just as good as the Avengers, in my opinion. I don't think the theatrical release of the Justice League was on that level at all. I think there were a lot of issues with it. So I'm just happy that this got released. And I think last week we had the Oscars, and they announced that the fan moment of the year was the Flash entering the Speed Force. So I was a little upset. I wanted Avengers Assemble to win that one. I thought that was a better fan moment. But Barry going into the Speed Force at the end of Justice League was really good as well. So so those are the movies that I rewatched at home. Let me know if you've seen those and what you think. Otherwise, if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend any of the ones that I've marked here as ones that I've loved. And then, just to wrap up this Movies Monthly, normally I have a section on soundtracks that I listen to for the month, but this was honestly kind of a slow month for new music that I've listened to. I think the only new soundtrack that released that I listened to was The Batman, and that's one I really recommend. I thought Michael Giacchino did an awesome job with that soundtrack. I really like how he kind of played with the Ave Maria tune to give the Riddler his theme. I thought that was very clever. That's if you haven't listened to that and you enjoy soundtracks, I highly recommend that. That's one of my favorite ones of the more recent films that have come out. With that wraps up our Movies Monthly. And let me know in the comments down below what you watched in March. What are you looking forward to in the upcoming month of April? I know I'm most looking forward to The Secrets of Dumbledore, but we've got Morbius coming out, which I think I've been seeing has like mixed or kind of negative reviews, so I'm definitely checking my expectations on that one. Otherwise, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, I think is what it's called. That looks like it's going to be a really good film, so I'm excited for that. But those are just a few of the movies that I'm looking forward to. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Otherwise, if you're still if you're still here at the end of this video, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy, and we will catch you in the next video.